This morning, Consumer Reports has a bone to pick with the FDA. The government recently came out with guidelines urging people to eat more fish. But for the first time, the FDA set a minimum level for pregnant women between 8 and 12 ounces a week.
But Consumer Reports reviewed the data and found reason for concern over mercury in some kinds of fish. Urvashi Rangan is the magazine's Director of Consumer Safety and Sustainability. Urvashi, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So the government report came out in June. What did you find when you looked?
So the government report basically says people should be eating more fish. We agree. I think where we differ here is in what kinds of fish people should eat. We want people to make the safest options. And when it comes to being pregnant, we want pregnant women to actually avoid tuna altogether so that they aren't subject to the risks. When we looked at the FDA's most recent data, about 20% of chunk white tuna cans actually are double the average that the FDA reports and uses in their assessment. We think that's too much. We don't think pregnant women need to take that on. So while you're pregnant, reach down the aisle for canned wild salmon. That's a better option.
Why only 20% of the canned tuna had those high mercury levels?
It's really unclear. Chunk white is a mix of different types of tunas, and tunas definitely have a range of mercury. They thought chunk white was among the lowest in average levels, but as we've seen in the last few years, the frequency of hitting a spike with chunk white has gotten a lot higher than it was before.
I always thought that when I was pregnant, avoid like the tuna that you get in the restaurant, that has really high levels of mercury, but that the chunk light tuna in the store in moderation is fine.
Yeah, and it turns out our previous advice, it was 6% of cans were spiking. Now it's 20% of chunk white cans are spiking. We just think during the time you're pregnant, you don't have to take on that risk. There's plenty of other great fish to choose from that has lower risk and all the benefit.
We want to ask you about the FDA's comment. We reached out to them and they said the methodology employed by Consumer Reports overestimates the negative effects and overlooks the strong body of scientific evidence published in the last decade, basically saying the nutritional value outweighs any proposed damage.
Yeah, it's a really peculiar approach, actually, that the FDA has taken, where they're trying to subtract the risks from the benefits and give you a net benefit. What we're trying to do is say, yes, fish has a benefit, but the less mercury you get is better. And so we want people to make safer options, safer choices, especially when they're pregnant, when the fetus is the most vulnerable to the damaging effects of mercury.
And what are the effects of mercury?
Well, they're manyfold. Neurotoxin is primarily what mercury does, especially when you have a fetus that's developing its neurological system. And there's also consequences for adults who eat high mercury that are also very similar. It can also be an immune toxin.
I have a 2.5-year-old. I'm just curious. He's obsessed with fish sticks right now. For children right now, what amount should we be giving them?
You know, there's a lot of good choices for kids, and we have a recommended list based on all the data that we and the FDA looked at. So haddock, for example, tilapia, catfish, these are all good choices. When it comes to tuna, though, be careful with kids. We have a graph based on the weight of a child and how much tuna they should be eating a week. It's not very much, and it's important for parents to check that.
Luckily, he doesn't like tuna. Urvashi Rangan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
To see how much mercury you may be getting from fish and to read the Consumer Reports piece, go to CBSThisMorning.com.